As we know, the Kraken have been playing pretty well so far this season and came into this game against Vegas with a pretty respectable 11-5-3 record to show for it. But this game was a statement win for Seattle. And yes, I know that they're only a quarter of the way through the season, so there's still plenty of hockey left to be played in which anything can happen. But with the Kraken playing the way they are right now, this team has showed that they can go toe-to-toe with just about any team in the league. Other than maybe Boston at home, but that's a whole separate thing. Pretty incredible what they're doing, at least in their own arena. Although even with that being said, Seattle, when they were bad last year, did beat Florida and end their home winning streak to start last season. So yeah, I don't think it's at all unfair to say this team is for real. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken go into Vegas and for the first time in franchise history, defeat their older expansion sibling in the Vegas Golden Knights 4-2. And a win that once again makes a statement that this isn't your grandfather's Kraken team. Or, the team he cheered for last year, assuming he's a Kraken fan. And with the win, improving their season record to 12-5-3 for 27 points in the standings, which puts them solidly in second place in the division. And when I say solidly, I mean that there's nobody that close behind them. The closest team to them is the team that they just beat in Vegas. Okay, fine, so the Kings are technically the closest to the Kraken with 26 points in the standings, but they've played 3 more games than Seattle, and Vegas, while they are 6 points away from the Kraken, have played 2 more. So if the Kraken were to win each of those next 2 games, they would be within 2 points of the Vegas Golden Knights and well clear of the Kings. But even with that having been said, let's not get too carried away looking off into the future, which I know is pretty tempting, especially with fans starting to see all these different stats of where teams are in the standings at the Thanksgiving or American Thanksgiving break, giving the Kraken anywhere from a 70 to 94% chance to make the playoffs. Still a good distance away. One thing we know for sure, though, is this team is much improved from last year, where with their 12th win on the season here on the 25th of November, last season, win number 12 came in Game 39 on January 20th. Not only almost 2 months away, but also almost twice as many games played. So yeah, I think it's more than fair to enjoy the way this team is playing, and believe that it could be for real going into the rest of this season. But as for this game itself, the one that actually got the Kraken that 12th win in the first place, line-up-wise, there's only one change for the Kraken in this game from the last game of the homestand a couple days ago against the Sharks. That having been said, it is a pretty big one, as it's Philip Grubauer back in net for the first time since the 17th of October, coming off of injury and taking Jones' spot in net. And yeah, Jones didn't have a great game against the Sharks, though the 5 goals he lets in were hard to really put too much on him. Even still, now with both of these goaltenders healthy, I think they are probably going to go back to the 1A, 1B, or maybe just a straight-up tandem for, well, as long as they can keep both of them healthy. Plus, even aside from that, and the fact that Jones had started the last 8 games for the Kraken, it does make some sense from the perspective that the last time the Kraken played the Golden Knights at the start of their first homestand, Jones got the start in that game, but ended up getting pulled, giving, well, his worst performance so far for Seattle. So, giving Grubauer a chance to start, especially now off of injury, makes a lot of sense, and not only that, but it gives number 31 a chance to play on his 31st birthday. As the game gets started, though, Grubauer would, at least for the most part, end up having to wait a few more minutes before really seeing his first NHL action in over a month. And that's because, outside of the first minute or so of the game where really not much of anything happens, for the following 5 to 6 minutes as we get into the middle part of the first, it's all Kraken, as they pretty much keep the Vegas Golden Knights into their end of the ice, only occasionally letting them into the neutral zone to get off line changes. And with all that pressure in the offensive zone and a strong start in this game, it really doesn't end up taking long at all for the Kraken to capitalize on it, as just 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the game, after actually a couple of other pretty good scoring chances from Donato, Gord gets the puck off the boards up to Larson. He fires a shot from the blue line straight at the goal. The save is made, but the rebound's right out to Donato, who's alone in front of the net, and he puts it in right past Hill to give the Kraken that early 1-0 lead. And for Donato, that's now 2 goals in the last 2 games. So now, following Donato's goal and the face-off at center ice and the puck outside of Vegas' end of the ice, they are able to at least stall the Kraken momentum for a little while, right up until they send Seattle to the power play. And it is a power play that, while it doesn't end up scoring for the Kraken, they do spend the vast majority of it in the offensive end and get a number of chances off on net. Really, it just comes down to Hill and Vegas doing some good defensive blocking in front of him to keep this puck out of the net. And still, though, while Vegas again is able to kill this off, Seattle is able to use this power play to gain that momentum right back that they had before Donato's goal and keep that ice tilted towards Vegas's net. And eventually, a couple minutes later, Larson gets the puck out to Burakovsky coming into the offensive end. And Burakovsky stares down the net and fires a bullet into the back of it to give the Kraken the 2-0 lead 8 minutes in. I also have absolutely no idea what the heck is going on behind this play with one of the Vegas defensemen or forwards. There's no way that pass was going out to the side, but he really laid out to try to prevent that from happening if it was going to. Either way, Burakovsky doesn't pay that any attention and does get the Kraken on the board again. However, it is at this point, again after the Kraken have taken a 2-0 lead less than halfway through the first, that Vegas is finally able to get into the offensive end with the puck and get a couple of chances off on the Kraken net. The first one is not a terribly hard save for Grubauer to make, but even with some rust to knock off, he is able to make this save relatively easily, and then makes a pretty nice save off of the rebound from the other side of the net. Even after those saves, though, Vegas does end up on the power play shortly after, and while the Kraken do a good job of killing it off for the most part, up until the final seconds of it, in fact, until those final seconds, the only shot attempt on this power play for Vegas came from Yanni Gord shorthanded. But eventually, as the final seconds of this Vegas power play are ticking off, Theodore from the blue line just throws the puck towards the net. Carlson actually tips it on the net from the slot. And while Grubauer does make the initial save, Waugh, who's kind of like Donato was earlier, all alone in front of the net, picks up the rebound and just shuffles it right through Grubauer's pads and into the back of the net to give Vegas the power play goal and bring them to within 1. And then 2 minutes later, after again really not much of anything has happened, in fact, I think it may have been on the very next shot attempt from either team. Once again, it's Shea Theodore who's trying to drive from the boards in the corner out towards the Kraken net with the puck, but Soucy makes a good defensive play with his stick, whacking the puck away from Theodore. Unfortunately, he gets more of Theodore's stick and less of the puck, and the puck just kind of takes a fortunate bounce for Vegas and slides right out into the slot, right out in front of Kessel, who, credit where it's due, gets a very nice shot off and gets it over the far pad of Grubauer into the back of the net to tie the game at 2, as Vegas is able to come all the way back from that early pressure that the Kraken were able to put on. And it is at this point that I'll admit there was a little bit of a feeling that this one kind of seemed like some of the games we saw last year. Now, the Kraken didn't get off to a lot of fast starts like they did in this one, but still at the other end of the ice, a couple of those first shots, in this case, 2 of the first 6 shots that the Vegas Golden Knights have, in some way through bad defense, bad goaltending, or just bad bounces, find their way into Seattle's net, and it completely negates that good start that they had. Now, I will say that, again, although it's 2 of the first 6 shots, and Grubauer did look like he was maybe knocking off a little bit of rust at the start, I don't really think either one of these are entirely his fault. Maybe he could have been a little bit quicker to get on that rebound from the first one, but even then, it's a power play goal, and Waugh's right out in front of the net and just gets to it before he can get his glove down. And the second one, again, it's an unfortunate bounce, a shot that he isn't expecting, and it's just a nice shot from a very good player in Kessel. So, at least for me anyway, the 2 goals that Vegas gets here have more to do with just some fortunate bounces that they get out in front of the Kraken net, which, to be fair, Donato got one of those himself to get the Kraken on the board in the first place, and not really so much Grubauer's fault. Of course, as we know from the final score, he wouldn't let in another one the rest of the night, stopping all of the remaining 16 shots that Vegas would get on net throughout the course of the rest of the game, finishing it with 20 saves on 22 shots. A couple of which actually come throughout the course of the rest of this first period, as Vegas does get the better of the Kraken, I would say, through the back half of the first, certainly getting more chances off on net, and even getting a few from the middle of the ice, which is what Seattle's been pretty good at limiting opponents to outside of the San Jose game, and that was kind of one of the more worrying things about that San Jose game. While the Sharks don't have the depth offensively to take advantage of it, they still were able to put 5 on the board, and if the Kraken were to play that sloppy in the defensive end against the Golden Knights, it could get ugly. Fortunately, though, they again aren't able to get on the board throughout the rest of the first, getting to the first intermission with the game tied at 2. And then, by the time the second starts, the Kraken defense was pretty locked down for most of the rest of the game. Meanwhile, at the other end of the ice, about 5 minutes into the period, Alexiak tries to emulate Beniers from last game by carrying the puck into the offensive zone along the boards and taking a bunch of defenders with him down into the corner. Now, as I think you're probably well aware, Alexiak isn't quite as quick on his feet as Beniers is, so he doesn't get right behind the net, instead just gets to the corner before he's cut off, but is still able to get a pass from down in the corner, up the boards to Burakovsky. Burakovsky holds it for a second, kind of gliding towards the slot, eventually just firing off another laser, and once again it finds the back of the net to give the Kraken the 3-2 lead. So for Burakovsky, two pretty similar looking goals, and two shots that he just rifles into the back of the net, beating Hill on both of them. And with this second goal from Burakovsky, unlike the first one where he did have a fair amount of space to get that shot off, this time he's in the middle of three Golden Knights who are all trying to poke at his stick or the puck. He still is able to get the clean shot off and find that small spot in between Hill and the goalpost. And now for Burakovsky, with 2 goals in the game already here early in the second, not only does he have a chance for the rest of this game to become the first Kraken ever to get a hat trick on the road, which he did get close to a few times in this game, including an opportunity at the empty net that he ends up having stolen from him before he can get it out of the defensive end. But with these 2 goals, his 6th and 7th on the season equals McCann and Schwartz for the most in the team, with of course Eberle and Beniers right behind them, both with 6. Again, just showing how spread out the Kraken are able to get their scoring, and any guy or any line or defensive pairing can hurt you. Something that, while again, their top end might not match up with, say, Jack Eichel, for example, is what the Kraken have been able to use to make some of those matchups hard for opposing coaches to know what the best option is, and oftentimes just outlasting teams with that depth. And then, shortly after taking the 3-2 lead, the Kraken would get their second power play of the game. Though this one really doesn't go much of anywhere. In fact, they have a hard time even getting into the offensive zone. I don't think they even manage a shot attempt, much less an actual shot on goal. Even still, though, over the next few minutes through the middle part of the second period, the Kraken, I would say, got the better of the scoring chances, though there were actually pretty good chances at both ends of the ice. Hill made a couple of pretty big saves to keep this game still a 1-goal game for Vegas, and at the other end, Grubauer made one spectacular save on Shea Theodore, as Theodore just gets his way right out in front of the net, completely alone one-on-one with Grubauer, and from point blank, fires or tries to put off a really nice shot over the pad, but Grubauer gets his glove to it and keeps Seattle in the lead with, again, a very nice glove save. Speaking of which, he actually had another pretty nice save on Theodore, who got an open shot off, like completely open from the face-off dot, that Grubauer was able to close his armpit on just in time to keep it from squeaking through. And again, while he may have looked a little rusty towards the start of the game, he was absolutely a wall in net for the rest of it after giving up that second goal. And then, finally, at least as far as scoring is concerned in this game anyway, as we close in on the final minute plus of this second period, with the Beniers line out on the ice for the Kraken, which again was a very dangerous line just about every time it was on the ice for the Kraken. McCann fires off a shot that goes just wide of the net, but rebounds out with some empty net there, but it is scooped out right back to behind the net in a safe area for the Golden Knights. And they try to get it out of their defensive end, but just before it can get to the blue line, Beniers is able to scoop around, pick up the puck, and get it out to Eberle. And from there, Eberle, still very much at the top of the offensive zone, is able to stick handle his way, driving through just about every player the Vegas has out on the ice, from one corner of the slot diagonally right down to the other, beating Hill to the far side to get the backhanded shot off, which Hill is able to somehow dive back to get his paddle to, making a spectacular paddle save to rob Eberle of the goal. However, Eberle is able to stick with it, and as he goes past the puck, whip around 180 and get to the rebound forehand, and he roofs that second opportunity from the forehand over the outstretched and down and out Hill, who at this point really has no chance to make a second save. And for Eberle, it has to be probably the goal of the year for the Kraken so far. If not, it's certainly up there. And it gives the Kraken that 4-2 lead that they would end up winning with. So then, obviously, since again that was the final goal of the game, the third period is a scoreless one. And it's one where the Kraken were very much just playing their game to a T, playing solidly in the defensive end and not allowing much of anything as far as chances from the middle of the ice for the Golden Knights, except for one shot from the slot that Eichel was able to get off, though Grubauer was able to come up with yet another big save on that one. Otherwise, the Golden Knights were pretty much kept to the outside and forced to try to shoot things into the middle and look for rebounds, which the Kraken were able to clean up any chances that there were there as far as rebounds are concerned. And even at that, not a lot of chances actually got to the net, as the Kraken were, through that defensive structure, able to limit the Golden Knights to just 3 shots on goal until the final minutes of this third period. Of course, I mean, in the period, they had more than that over the course of the rest of the game, but again, the Kraken playing very well in the defensive end, but also not turtling up by any means, as they were still taking advantage of any mistakes or turnovers that Vegas had. And then once they had the puck, rather than just trying to drive it down to the offensive end to create scoring opportunities. While they still were trying to create scoring opportunities, they were being much more careful with the puck and intentional with the passing, just trying to keep possession of it for as long as they could without just backwards passing it constantly. Actually, not a terribly dissimilar approach with the puck to what we saw them use in those successful 3-on-3 overtimes on the homestand, where they're very much trying to keep possession of the puck and not take unnecessary chances even when they had them in the offensive end. If they did take a chance, it was going to have to be a pretty good scoring one, which they got a couple of those. Ryan Donato in particular had a couple of very nice shots that Hill had to come up with nice saves on to keep it from becoming 5-2. And then eventually we do get into the final minutes of the period where Hill looked desperate to leave the net, almost wanting to leave around 5 minutes. He was banging a stick on the ice, trying to get the attention of the bench. Eventually, the Golden Knights decided that they wanted him pulled around 3 minutes, but at that point, the Kraken were in the offensive end and kept him from leaving until right around 2 minutes left. The Kraken don't really allow too much of anything in those final empty net moments, though again, Burakovsky has one chance where it's stolen from him at the blue line to try to get that hat trick in the empty net. Seattle doesn't end up hitting it, but they only allow 3 more shots in this 6-on-5 opportunity that Vegas gets and end up winning it 4-2. And again, for the Kraken, not only is this a big win against a divisional rival who at the moment is the only team ahead of you in the divisional standings, but it's also a win against one of the 3 teams so far that has really separated themselves from the rest of the league. It's clearly one of the 3 best teams to start out the year, and Seattle came in and didn't just win in some sort of fluky manner where they get a couple of lucky bounces and Vegas can't get anything to go their way. It was a game where Seattle looked like the better team for the majority of it. Now, sure, Vegas got their chances as well, but there was probably only about the back half 10 minutes of that first period, or maybe the middle 10 minutes of that first period, where Vegas looked like the Vegas team getting those dangerous chances that the Kraken have seen in the previous 5 meetings between the two of them. Otherwise, Seattle was able to keep that pretty quiet and then also create chances the other way, getting through the Vegas defense, which has to be said, they are very good at blocking some shots. Plus, defensively for the Kraken, they were able to keep Eichel off the score sheet, which not a lot of teams have been able to do to this point in the season. Also, outside of a couple of blunders there in the middle part of the first, playing very much their structure and getting back to that after a Sharks game where they maybe got a little bit sloppy here and there and a little careless in the defensive end. Also, Grubauer and net, very much playing a strong game behind that defense, and the 2 that end up past him are kind of just fortunate bounces that lead to good shots. I suppose it's also probably worth mentioning that early on in the third period, the Kraken did have one very unfortunate shift from the third line where 2 guys end up leaving the ice after it and going to the locker room, with Tanev not putting any weight on one of his legs, or very limited weight, which was a very scary sight to see after his injury last year. And then right after that, Burakovsky took a shot to the face. Both of them immediately going down the tunnel to the locker room, though fortunately both of them came back out on the ice. Tanev pretty quickly, so maybe it was just a cramp or something like that. Hard to say exactly what. Either way, he was back and looked perfectly fine. And eventually Burakovsky also was back out on the ice, though sure, he's going to have a pretty fat cheek tomorrow. As for the Kraken 3 stars in this game, this is definitely going to be one where it's going to be hard to limit it to just 3, but the first one is pretty obvious once again, and it's got to be Andrei Burakovsky, who has been, over this last stretch of a few games, an absolutely unstoppable force, just constantly on the scoring sheet, putting up 3 points in the game previous and now another 2 in this one. But it's also not just that they've been getting a lot of their scoring opportunities to go, they're just creating a lot of scoring opportunities, which is certainly helped by the fact that Burakovsky and that first line have been starting to get close to true first line minutes, as in this game they were close to 20 minutes each. In fact, Wemberg actually got there, which is more than we've seen really hardly at all in the Kraken history as far as a forward ice time is concerned. Then, second star, I gotta go with Jordan Eberle. That 4th goal was an absolute beauty. Just absolutely no quit on it whatsoever. Again, just stick handling through just about the entire defense to get a nice shot off, and then when he gets robbed, still sticking with it, whipping around and getting a second shot off to put it in. An absolutely fantastic play from him, and certainly a goal of the year candidate for the Kraken to this point. And finally, my 3rd star of the game for the Kraken. Again, I could go any different number of ways here. There were a lot of guys that are deserving of some mention, I am going to end up going with the other guy other than Burakovsky, obviously, who actually got an official star in Adam Larson. He does get 2 assists in this game, his second and third of the season, so really not getting on the scoring sheet as much as he did last year, at least to this point anyway, though that's never been the primary part of his game in the first place. Last year was a bit of an anomaly as far as that concerned, but he has always been much more solid in the defensive end, which, again, last year may not have been his best year, all things considered there, but this year, especially lately, he has been an absolute wall back there, not letting anything pass him and laying some big hits. Not to mention the fact that as one of the top pair defensemen, it's his job primarily, as well as Dunn, though he's certainly the more defensive of the two, to shut down the most skilled players for the opposing teams. And as we know, Vegas has quite a few pretty skilled guys, and Larson was, again, very solid out on the ice every time he was out there, which was a lot with 25 minutes of ice time in this one. But let me know what you thought down in the comment section below. Maybe you think Grubauer's worthy of a star coming off of that long stint on the injured reserve and playing well in his first game back, and it being his birthday nonetheless, so at least a birthday star is probably in order, right? Either way, let me know what you think as far as stars are concerned down in the comment section below. And the Kraken will now go to Anaheim in a couple of days, looking for a tying franchise record 5th win in a row, tying their previous 5-game winning streak from earlier on this season. Also, before we close things out, I do want to have a quick Shane Wright update here. He's played another game now on Thanksgiving Day with the Firebirds, where he put another 2 goals in. So, to this point in 2 games with the Firebirds, he's scored 3. So, playing pretty well at the AHL level. Again, we'll get to see him back probably for just a game or 2 before he goes off to World Juniors in early December. Oh, and before I forget, I really hope genuinely that you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving, or at least the US watchers, or anybody else that celebrated US Thanksgiving on Thursday. Otherwise, I hope you had a good Thursday without any hockey to watch. Found something else to do. Anyway, big thank you again to everybody that watches these and hangs out in the comments, all that stuff. I really appreciate all of you. And yeah, let's keep this thing rolling. Anyway, with that, I think we have reached the end of this one. So thank you very much for watching if you made it to this point. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. Until next time, against Anaheim, a team who's very much at the other end of things from the Vegas team the Kraken just played. Stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.